first I want to talk to Bríd O'Brien of the Irish National Organisation of the Unemployed, because there was a big conference being held yesterday, and this group, which represents unemployed people, has called on the government to restore social welfare payments to levels seen before the economic crisis. Good morning to you, Bríd, and you're welcome to the show. You had your annual delegate conference yesterday discussing this topic. Just remind us, what were things like for unemployed people kind of pre-recession?
Well, one of the big changes that happened at the start of the recession was they reduced the rates for young people, say initially aged 18 to 19. This is on the means tested payment, job seekers allowing payment. And then they extended that out to people now aged up to 25. So there's a reduced rate for that age cohort. So that's one of the issues we would like to see them address. I think it'd be an important issue to address, so it would, because we would see that as unfair to young people. It's a means tested payment, so if you're entitled to a full payment, it means you have few other means. Basically, our motion to conference was around ensuring that rates are set at a level that would bring people above the poverty line and support people to meet.
Are you there?
Sorry, 2 seconds.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, and this, as I say, is the annual delegate conference which the INOU has been hosting. And of course, Bríd, one of the issues is that the number of unemployed people has fallen. So people might be listening in going, well, is there a need to restore the rates?
Well, there is. I mean, I think basically people need to bear in mind that according to the official figures, there's still 140,000 people unemployed. Now, to be captured by that figure, you have to answer yes to two questions. You have to have been genuinely seeking work in the past 4 weeks. You have to be available to take up work in the next 2 weeks. People might answer no to either or both of those questions. One, people may not have had joy finding work and not necessarily have looked in the past 4 weeks. It's hard to, if you're not been successful, to keep at it. And for others, they may feel they may have caring responsibilities, or transport might be an issue, and they might feel it might take them longer than 2 weeks to resolve it, or they might not even be feel in a position to resolve it until they actually secure a job. So they might answer no to that question. So that's that figure. Then on the live register, there's approximately 220,000 people. Now, a fifth of those are working part-time. So very much there are a lot of people who are dependent on social welfare. The overwhelming majority of people unemployed want a job. They want to be able to establish or re-establish their economic independence. But sometimes finding a job can be difficult. And in particular, maybe finding a job where you know what the hours are, what your levels of pay are going to be, can be difficult depending on where you live, your skill set and your success in finding work. So for a lot of, when you look at the poverty figures, one of the striking things is that for people who are unemployed, their at risk of poverty is almost 2.5 times the rate of the national rate. So it is certainly, it's an issue that faces people, and one that we would like to see addressed. Okay. Ideally, we'd like to see everybody in a good job.
Yes, and I was going to say,
for those who aren't on it, to be able to manage and be able to live.
But should the focus not be on removing the barriers to work? So if we have a pot of money that we can either increase social welfare payments for people, or we can put the resources into removing those barriers, should that not be the focus, rather than providing more money for social welfare, put that money into getting people into work?
They need to use the resources at their disposal to support people to get work, but they then also need to address issues like ageism in the labour market. We hear back from older unemployed people of good experience and good skills still struggling to find work, and age is clearly a barrier. We will be aware of other people depending on the community.
Can't get any job, or can't get the job they'd like?
Not successful in getting jobs they were applying for. To find their age is going against them. And then likewise, we will be aware of people depending on the community they're from or the area they live. Likewise, often don't get much joy at times trying to find work
in their area.
There are issues the state needs to address. There are also issues around the cost of transport and childcare that needs to be addressed. One of the issues that our affiliates have raised with us, particularly those living in more rural areas, is the cost of car insurance really for young people. And basically, to get around, maybe to get to a job, or even if you're living in an urban area, if the job you're get is it doesn't have regular hours, then more than likely you're going to need to have your own transport, and the cost of insurance can be prohibitive for young people. So there are some of those practical steps the state needs to address to smooth out the path for people. And so we feel it's important that they address those issues and those barriers, and where the system itself is an obstacle, where maybe they are not timely in their information provision to people, right, informing people of things, maybe not giving people good supports around actually applying for a job. Because applying for a job and being successful is a job in itself. I'm sure you know, Shane, I certainly do, people who seem to be very good at it, at doing their CV, presenting themselves, and then other people are not so good. I've interviewed people myself who I knew could do the job, but just on the day they didn't present themselves well. It's the skill set in itself, an ability to do that. So those very practical supports certainly need to be there, need to be improved, and we need to ensure that people are getting them, are well informed, good supports, good advice, and are able to make that transition.
Right.
And when those supports are in place, it makes a massive difference to people.
What would you say? I know there will be people listening this morning who will hear what you're saying, but still feel that if we increase social welfare payments for those very people that you're talking about, then there's even less of an incentive to go and get a job.
Well, research has shown that the overwhelming majority of people who are unemployed want a job. And what the ESRI found a few years back, even for those who may initially not be any better off, the overwhelming majority of them wanted a job. I mean, the reality is, if you get a job, particularly, a job where you know where your income is, regular work, you know where you stand, at least then you're independent, you're not answerable to somebody else in terms of your income, and generally if you're in a job, you can then, work to maybe improve that job and improve your prospects. While if you're on social welfare, you don't have that possibility. So I think from that point of view, that's the reality people need to be aware of. And for an awful lot of people, trying to manage on a welfare payment is extremely difficult. Any bump in the road at all can knock people sideways. And if people then are struggling to manage, then having the wherewithal to be able to apply for and be successful in getting work is very difficult, becomes even more difficult. So we feel that's an important issue that needs to be addressed, and then good supports in place for people to be able to secure employment, and particularly those who maybe are facing issues and barriers in the labour market, for those barriers to be addressed will be very welcome.
OK, and just remind us as well, apart from the core social welfare payment, we even had things like the Christmas bonus cut. Where are we with that, and sort of what should the government be doing to restore that?
Yeah, that was one of motions to conference as well. It was one that came from our general branch. That's the mechanism through which unemployed people actively participate in the organisation. And their motion was calling for 100% for that to be restored. And our chairperson, when she was welcoming the minister at the conference yesterday, brought that to her attention, that, it will be very welcome that in this budget that the Christmas bonus will be restored to people. Yeah, okay. 100%.
And if the rates are restored in general, how much would social welfare go, the core dole payment per week, as we call it, how much would that have to go back to?
It would be going up by about roughly another £5. If they brought it back, it'd be up by £5. Would more or less get us there if they did that this year.
To 200?
We're now at 198, so it'll be 203. So slightly over €203. Just as the crisis, as early 2009. Yeah.
Well, certainly no one's getting rich on €203 a week, in fairness now. Even with €500 or €600, people struggle every week. Bríd, thank you very much for joining us, and that conference continues. That's Bríd O'Brien there from the Irish National Organisation of the Unemployed.